All right, everybody, good evening and welcome to Digging Deeper Daily. Tonight we're going to finish off the book of Daniel. We're going to be in chapters 11 and 12. And it's kind of interesting. Daniel chapter 11 is long. It's 45 verses long. I won't be reading through that. I will probably pick out a couple of passages here and there. And then chapter 12 is only 13 verses long. And that's how the book ends up. So we're going to spend some time in there. But tonight we're going to take a look at chapter 11. And chapter 11 is different because it's prophecy. But it's a different kind of prophecy than what we've seen. There's no graphic imagery. There's no symbols. There's no goats and rams. There's no beasts with bronze legs and iron chest, and there's no beasts. There's no horns. There's no anything like that. It's just names. It's kings, wars, power shifts, intrigue, and the fact that the people of God are in the midst of all of this while it's happening around them. So the thing about this prophecy is Daniel chapter 11 is the most detailed, precise prophecy in all of the Bible. This is it right here, the one that we're looking at tonight. It is so freakishly precise that many scholars presume that it was written after the fact. I shared this before. I'm going to share it again. I love sharing this story because it just really tells you where the world is at. But we watched a video, started to watch a 2-hour documentary on, it was either A&E, the History Channel, one of those, I can't remember which one it was, but it was a 2-hour special on the book of Daniel. And I thought, wow, that'll be interesting. I'll watch that. And they started with these words. They said, scholars agree that the book of Daniel was written in the 2nd century BC. Well, that's not true. That's not true at all. The book was not written in the 2nd century BC. Daniel lived much prior to that. But why would they say that? Because they don't believe in prophecy. And when they read how incredibly detailed and precise Daniel chapter 11 is, they just assume that it had to be written after the fact because it's all true. But this is what prophecy is. It is God showing us what's going to happen. And Daniel 11 isn't there to teach us history. Daniel 11 is there to teach us that God knew what was coming. And he revealed that to Daniel. And Daniel was in the court of the kings, and he was able to give some warning and also some testimony to who God is, the power and the amazing, incredible foresight and pre-knowledge that God has. So let me just read the first 4 verses of chapter 11. We might read a couple more sections, but we're not going to spend a lot of time. I want to get more into the real careful stuff here. But in Daniel 11, Daniel 11, verses 1 through 4, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him. So there's Daniel. That's why God is revealing this to Daniel. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings are going to arise in Persia. Then a 4th will gain far more riches than all of them. As soon as he becomes strong through his riches, he will arouse the whole empire against the realm of Greece. And a mighty king will arise, and he will rule with great authority and do as he pleases. But as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 points of the compass, though not to his own descendants, nor according to his authority which he wielded, for his sovereignty will be uprooted and given to others besides them. So those 4 verses just tell an incredible amount of history in just a small, compact part of the scriptures. And that tells us something about God himself, that history seems huge when we are in it. Because like the history of this country spans over 200 years. We're going to have the 250th anniversary coming up, right? Yeah, so 250th anniversary, and that is far longer than any of us live. So we live in just a segment of these sections of history, but God lives above them and outside of them, and he sees them all as they develop and unfold and close. The history of these empires is just 4 verses in this passage of Daniel, but they span centuries of power and war and conquest. So let me just summarize these 4 verses, okay? What it's saying is that Persia will rise, and we saw this. The Babylonian Empire came first, then the Medians, and the Medians and the Persians allied themselves to each other, but Persia became predominant in that alliance. So Persia will rise. One king will be exceptionally wealthy. Greece will respond. The mighty king will conquer fast and die young. That's Alexander the Great, no doubt about it. He conquered the world in a flash and was dead by the age of 32. And then his kingdom won't stay in the family. God reduces these 3 great empires to just a few sentences. But they were a big deal when they were taking place, right? So Alexander the Great dies, and things slow down in chapter 11 here. We start to talk about the king of the south and the king of the north, and we're talking in relationship to Israel, Syria, and Egypt. And it talks about this long-standing war between those 2 powers, with Israel as the collateral damage in the middle. And indeed, that is the story of Israel. Israel sits in a place in the Middle East where all of these power shifts and struggles come to bear. The empires have to march over Israel to get to each other. The Egyptians have to go through Israel to get to Syria. The Babylonians have to go through Israel to get to Egypt. This dynamic, this geopolitical dynamic takes place, and Israel becomes the center of everything. And this comes to bear in the New Testament. Jesus is born right there in the crossroads of history, right there in Israel, which sits on the western part of Asia, which connects Asia, Africa, and Europe. That little piece of land, that's why it is so important. And when the Roman Empire, the 4th of these empires, when it grows and expands, Jesus is right there in Nazareth, in the middle of the Roman Empire, where kingdoms have to march through there to get from one place to another. And that will be the story in the end of Armageddon. Most people don't know this, but geographically, Armageddon is just over the hill from Nazareth in the valley. There were probably times when Jesus, as a young man or a little boy, would walk up that mountain ridge and look out over and see into the valley of Armageddon. That's where the final battle is going to take place. Jesus saw that valley. And in fact, I think it's remarkable that Jesus went back to Nazareth to preach one day, and he was not well received. They rejected his message, and they took him out to throw him off of a cliff. Do the math in your head. You're in Nazareth. They're going to take you out to throw you off of a cliff. Where are they going to throw you into? Armageddon, right? Satan tried to assassinate Jesus in Armageddon before the whole thing could even develop. I think that's a pretty amazing story there. But back to Daniel. Okay, so there are we see in the middle, we start to get into a section in chapter 11 of Daniel, which really starts to feel a lot more like today. You were talking about Syria and Egypt and the Middle East conflict, which has been raging since the beginning of time. The Middle East is the hot seat of the world for conquest, battles, the people of God fighting against the enemies of God. This is where it has been taking place forever, since the beginning of recorded history to today. Like right now, today, people are dying over religious differences in the Middle East. So that's what that's all about. Now, back to the prophecy in Daniel. A ruler will arise after Alexander the Great. The kingdom will be divided up 4 ways, and a ruler will arise, and this is Antiochus the Fourth. And he was not the rightful ruler. He was not an honorable man, and he was ruthless, manipulative, and cunning. And that's exactly how Daniel describes him here. He does exactly what Daniel says. He outlawed worship. He desecrated the temple. He forced assimilation of pagan rituals and practices on the people and the temple cult of Israel. And he promoted and rewarded compromise and punished faithfulness. And those are almost the exact words that are used in chapter 11 of Daniel. So Daniel in chapter 11, verse 32, I wanted to read that verse. This is what he says: by smooth words he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly toward the covenant. But the people who know their God will display strength and take action. So this is describing the compromise of the people. People want to live, right? People don't want to die. They don't want to be killed for their faith. People want to save themselves. And most people will compromise their beliefs and their faith to save their lives. But those who know God, those who know and understand God, won't do that. They won't cave in on what they believe and what they know to be true. This is what faithfulness means, that you stick with it even in the hard times, that even when your life is on the line, you stand with God, you uphold him, and you defend God against the attacks. This is what faithfulness is all about. Now, there's a key verse that takes place later, verse 33. Those who have insight among the people will give understanding to the many, yet they will fall by the sword and by flame, by captivity and by plunder for many days. Now, when they fall, they will be granted a little help, and many will join with them in hypocrisy, and some of those who have insight will fall, in order to refine, purge, and make them pure until the end time, because it is still to come at the appointed time. So this attack on God's people is to refine them, to purge them, and to purify them. That's what this time is all about. This is how God perfects his people, through this type of persecution. Now, in chapter 11, verses 36 to 45, there's another shift that takes place. And it continues to describe Antiochus the Fourth. It doesn't name him by name. It just says what he will be like. But it goes beyond what Antiochus the Fourth was. It starts to develop this theme and describe somebody who historically doesn't really fully match Antiochus. And Jesus, in the Gospels, quotes this passage as a future event. So clearly, Daniel is prophesying about Antiochus But clearly, Jesus is telling us that this is not all fulfilled in Antiochus. There is one coming further, of whom Antiochus is just a type. Antiochus was the original evil ruler that Daniel is describing, but he is not the end time ruler. He is what the end time ruler will be like, but to a far greater degree. The desecration, the profaning of things, the manipulation, the ruthlessness, that will grow and grow in intensity as the end times comes. It's important to note here that evil tends to repeat itself. I'll give you an example of that, and some of you will know what I'm talking about. But when I was under attack at the church I was at, they were accusing me of things. They were accusing me of wanting to be the king of the church, and that didn't work. So they started accusing me of stealing money from the church, and I couldn't take it. And finally, it split our church, and some of the people scattered, and another pastor in town, an older pastor, he's been there forever, and he called me and he said, "Hey, what's going on up at your church? So some of your people ended up here." And I said, "Well, we had a little problem. We had a elder in the church who tried to take over, tried to run me out and take over the whole show here." And he said, "Let me guess. Did he accuse you of wanting to be the king of your church?" And I thought, "How did he know that?" And I said, yeah, he did." And he said, "And did they accuse you of stealing from the church?" And I thought, wow, how does he know this? And I said, "Yeah, they did do that." And he said, "Did they get to the third one?" And I said, What do you mean?" And he said, "Rich, this is the playbook. When you don't want the pastor of your church anymore, it's a playbook. It repeats itself over and over in every church. You accuse him of being power hungry. He wants to be the king of the church, and that doesn't work. So you got to find some way to accuse him. And he's taking money. He's just worried about the money in this church. That's all he cares about. So he's stealing money from the church." He goes, "It happens to all of us, Rich. They accuse you of being power hungry. They accuse you of stealing, but the third one is bad, and that is misbehavior with somebody else in the church, and you know what I mean." And I said, "No, they never got to that." And he said, "Well, be thankful they didn't, because you can't recover from that one. You can recover from the others, but you can't recover from that one." But I remember it just struck me like, this is a playbook. It repeats itself in church after church after church. Satan knows how to take down a pastor. He knows how to do this. I talk to my pastor friends all the time. Same playbook for all of them. They all go through this struggle, the accusations of wanting to be the king of the church, oh, he's taken money where he shouldn't. This is just the playbook in the church. This is history. History is like this. History is the story of the struggle for power on earth. And until we recognize that, we are subject to it. We can't allow ourselves to fall prey to this as Christians, as believers. We have to have our faith in God, and we have to trust that He knows what's going on, that He is sovereign, that He will reign in the end someday. Now, chapter 12, there's a shift. Chapter 11 is heavy. It's very deep. It's very heavy and hard stuff. Chapter 12, there's hope. Listen to chapter 12 as we start there. "Now at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands guard over the sons of your people, will arise. And there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people, everyone who is found written in the book, will be rescued. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, but the others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. Those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead the many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Now, that doesn't sound so much like Babylon and Persia and Greece and Rome, doesn't it? That is end times stuff. This is resurrection language. We shift from history to the end of time now. This is what chapter 12 is all about. And history doesn't end with the biggest army. The biggest army will be assembled at Armageddon. History doesn't end there. History begins there. The story of Christ and his millennial reign and the heavenly realm that he will open up for all of us and invite us into will begin with that battle. So we don't watch the world fight and be disheartened and discouraged. That's how the world behaves without Christ. This is what we expect from the world, is what we're seeing right now in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in New York, in your city. This is how the world behaves. And we shouldn't be surprised, but we should be appalled. We should do whatever we can to alleviate that, to help those around us, but mostly to bring Christ into the world, to bring that light of Christ into the dark world around us. I want to leave you with the last words of Daniel in chapter 12. In verse 9, he said, "Go your way, Daniel, for these words are concealed and sealed up until the end time. Many will be purged, purified, and refined, but the wicked will act wickedly. And none of the wicked will understand, but those who have insight will understand. From the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. How blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1,335 days. But as for you," I love this. This is the last verse of Daniel. I love this. Listen to how this ends. "But as for you, go your way to the end. Then you will enter into rest and rise again for your allotted portion at the end of the age." Isn't that a beautiful way to end Daniel? He had been a captive to an enemy power almost his whole life. And there's the promise at the end: rise again for your allotted portion at the end of the age. That's awesome. I love that. All right, that's it for Daniel. We'll be back tomorrow night for an open mic night. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to send that in. Hi to everybody that I missed. Mark, good to see you tonight. Patty, good to see you. And I saw Donna, Paula, Steve. Good to see you, Steve. And I think there was Amber. I think I got Amber in. Mark Hilbish. Good to see all of you guys. Welcome. And we'll be back here tomorrow night. And we'll see you then. God bless everybody, and good night.